factor in Germany's defeat. He had an aversion to any form of social unrest and was determined, when war became necessary, to fight it on his terms, on the cheap and quickly, so as to avoid any economic dislocation to social life. For this reason, Hitler was to become an enthusiastic supporter of the Panzer Arm. In War Minister von Blomberg and Commander of the Army von Fritsch, he had two officers who were sympathetic to the development of the tank arm. In June 1934, Fritz appointed Lutz to head the mechanized troop inspectorate with Guderian as its chief of staff. Before the end of the year, the 1st Panzer Brigade was established, the first genuine panzer unit in the German army. In 1935, Hitler officially announced that Germany would no longer be bound by the terms of the Versailles Treaty. In October, the first 3 panzer divisions were established, one of which is seen here parading through its garrison town to the acclaim of the people. The tanks on show are Panzer IIIs. As the panzer units emerged from the shadows, their activities became a matter of interest to the newsreel cameras. In this case, they've shot footage of tank troops and Panzer Is engaged in a Panzerfest, a public relations exercise by the army. The largest and most theatrical of the public displays was the Tag der Wehrmacht, Armed Forces Day, held annually during the week of the Nazi Party rally in Nuremberg. The footage is notable for showing a German army in transition. Much is redolent of the First World War, although the aircraft and panzers are harbingers of the further technical change that is to come. From a political point of view, it did much to suggest a strong link between the party and the Wehrmacht. (1936) was a significant year for the Nazi regime and the German army. In March of that year, Hitler took his first step to break the territorial ties of the Versailles Treaty by reoccupying the Rhineland. 6 months later, Germany hosted the Olympic Games. Some months later, German audiences were presented with a major film entitled Here im Werden. It openly showed for the first time the new German army engaged in its largest military exercise since the reintroduction of conscription and Hitler's denial of the Versailles Treaty. It shows the army slowly adopting armor as a major part of its organization. The army is still, however, in a transitional stage in its development, and cavalry is seen serving alongside the new Panzer Is. The existence of the new Luftwaffe was now out in the open. Deployed for the exercise, a Heinkel HE-46 parasol-winged Army cooperation aircraft. By the outbreak of the war, these will have been replaced by the more modern Henschel HS-126s. The Panzer IAs are employing flags to communicate and have not yet been fitted with radio. By this time, the Panzer IA had just been superseded on the production line by the improved and enlarged Panzer IB. In all, 818 of this first model of the Panzer I was completed and was to see service in the early years of the war through to North Africa and in the early days of the Russian campaign. Of particular interest is the gathering of foreign military observers at this exercise. Military attachés from England, Poland, the Soviet Union and Greece observed the ongoing events. By now, concern was growing in Paris and London at the growth of the German army, although at this stage in the development of the Panzerwaffe, there was no real perception that the developing German tank arm posed any real threat. Simulated artillery fire is provided firstly by 105mm FH-18 field guns designed by Rheinmetall and which entered service the previous year. These are joined a little later by the more heavy 150mm K-18 heavy artillery, which was the standard heavy weapon employed by the German army throughout the Second World War. The juxtaposition of the cavalry with the Panzer Is conveys the distinct impression of the German army in transition. The Panzer Is are not used in an infantry support role, but operate en masse, even though the film does not communicate any real sense of the tactics that are being employed. Other weapons soon to be seen, often in wartime footage, includes the 37mm PaK 35-36 anti-tank gun, which was to acquire the nickname in the French campaign of the Army's door knocker, due to its very poor performance in its intended role. Although the Panzer II light tank would be available in strength, and small numbers of the medium Panzer IIIs and IVs would join the ranks of the Panzerwaffe, there is a very real sense that what is being seen in this 1936 film is very much the German army as it would appear in 1939. It was in large exercises like this that the operational basis of the German tank arm was laid. With delays affecting the medium tank program, the decision was taken to order a new stopgap light Panzer in the 10-ton class. 100 were built in 2 development models up to March 1937, before the final model in the series was adopted as the basis of the full production standard Panzer II. This footage, dated from 1937, shows signals, infantry and panzer units on manoeuvres in Germany. The radio vehicle is a Mercedes-Benz G3A 6x4 communications lorry. Noteworthy of the vehicles is the pre-war camouflage schemes they carry. A 2-tone brown spray is worn over a base coat of dark grey. Infantry arrive while 2 artillery officers, who are wearing the pre-1933 steel helmet, prepare to give orders for the deployment of their heavy weapons. The radio truck sets up its tall mast and prepares to transmit orders to the artillery batteries. An artillery team manhandles its 150mm K-18 piece into position in preparation for firing. The gun could fire a 43-kilogram shell out to a maximum distance of 24,500 meters. The Panzers attack. This sequence gives our first proper look at the Panzer IB, which entered production in August 1935 to replace the 1A. The most obvious differing feature is the longer chassis, designed to incorporate the more powerful Maybach NL38 engine. Whereas the 1A had 4 sets of bogie wheels, the 1B had a 5th added. In nearly all other major aspects, it was similar to the first model, retaining the same weak armament and lack of armor protection. Its numerical significance is measured by the fact that it was used by all existing Panzer units from 1935 to 1940. Some 675 of this model were built, with production being phased out in June 1937. By then, redundant chassis of the Panzer IB were already being employed for conversions to tank hunters and self-propelled guns. Nevertheless, the 1B was to see extensive service through to 1941, when it was finally phased out of frontline service, many surviving vehicles ending up in tank training schools. In January 1937, 80 Panzer Is were sent to Spain by Hitler to assist Franco's nationalist cause in the Spanish Civil War. The unit, designated the 88th Armoured, was composed of volunteers and commanded by Major Wilhelm Ritter von Thoma. Later, a few early models of the Panzer II were also dispatched. What was proven by this experience was that the Panzer I was already obsolescent, and the Panzer II was also found wanting. Following the Anschluss, Hitler took the salute at the parade of the Panzers that had made the drive to Vienna as part of the Army's expeditionary force. The commander of the leading Panzer II carries the divisional colour. A light panzer for the cavalry led to the production of the Panzer II, which, apart from retaining the turret of the Panzer II, was a new design. The occupation of the rump of Czechoslovakia on March 15, 1939, netted the Germans a considerable prize in their efficient